Hey everybody, this is 𝙁𝙁𝙇𝘍 of 𝙎𝙄𝙀𝙉𝙄. Welcome to Cowboy Metals live stream. It is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. We had a little bit of technical difficulty with Zoom yet again, but I think we have got everything running. We will let everybody load into the stream while we get started. As a reminder, we have a poll up, and today's poll question is a digital dollar, the Fed's version of the CBDC, helpful or not to you as a citizen of the US? That is going to be the question that we will be answering during the live stream. Welcome everybody to the program. I'm your host, 𝙁𝙁𝙇𝘍. Remember that super chats are open should you want to do a super chat. And also what really helps us out on the channel is if you guys also elect to become members, and we have extra content specifically for those who join the membership. Every 2 weeks, we do 𝙁𝙁𝙇𝘍 Unfiltered, which gives you my thoughts on a lot of subjects and a lot of things, putting things together that we didn't necessarily say on the channel, but we can say there. You can do that. And if you're interested, not interested maybe in that content, but you do want to help the channel, you can sign up as a basic supporter as well. Welcome everybody to the program. Thank you, Peter Frowine, for writing shotgun as moderator. We appreciate you being there with us, Peter, on every broadcast. Welcome to everybody else in the program. Looks like we have about 62 people in and more coming. The amazing Mystico is here, as well as many other longtime guests. The title of today's presentation is Fed Insider Reveals the True Nature of the Digital Dollar. Of course, we've been covering this for the last couple of years, and we think a lot of what was said is probably pretty accurate. But in this case, it's nice to hear it from a true insider of the Fed. Thank you, Ralph Potts, for being a member and joining us. Thank you, Donald Best, for being here as well. 𝙂𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙑, thank you for being here. Lightning Rod, thank you for being here. As a reminder, super chats are open if you wish to use those. Thank you very much. We're going to get straight into it, guys. We're not going to take very long at all on this one. Before we get into the actual content of the program, however, I want to talk about our preferred provider on the program, and that would be very own Kinesis. We like Kinesis. I use Kinesis, and I'm very positive about it, and I think it relates directly to what we're going to be talking about in this presentation. We'll get to that in a moment. But I wanted to highlight some of the benefits of using Kinesis, other than the fact that you can use it to send money to and fro and to store your money in gold and silver, and that are the yields. So depending on whether you're a minter or a holder, or you're sending KAG or KAU to someone else, there are different yields that you get that are paid for out of the fees of the system. So it's basically an incentive to either be a minter. And the minter's yield, as you can see here, rewards Kinesis users for minting entirely new KAU or KAG. And then as the currency travels through the system, minters are paid a monthly yield in gold and silver forever. That is being paid out now. I'm also a holder, so I earn a yield on my holdings with metal I just leave in the account. It's a passive yield on every single gram of gold and silver held with Kinesis, and it's paid monthly in gold and silver for as long as you hold your precious metals. And I have confirmed that I have got those yields. You can also do a referrer yield. I'm also a referrer. So if you guys signed up under my referral account, I will get just a little bit of benefit for that, which does help the channel. Invite friends and family, if you will, or anybody else that's interested. And our referral link is down in the description for you if you're interested. And there's the velocity yield, which is when you get rewarded every time you trade KAU and KAG on the Kinesis exchange, or spend it with your Kinesis card. So you can get a debit card that allows you to spend your gold and silver on Kinesis. And coming soon to an account near you, the KVT yield. And that's the most powerful of all Kinesis yields. It is a 20% share of all revenue generated across the Kinesis system. And it's proportionally distributed back to the 300,000 KVT holders paid in physical gold and silver each month. Lots of great yields on it. In this document from Kinesis, they give us a little bit more information on how they actually work. And I want to walk through one or two with you. Here on this graphic, we have the minter's yield. And what the minter's yield allows you to do, let's say the example here, Carol mints 300 KAU. She deposits dollars in the mint, which is transformed into digital gold. She receives her KAU, and then it's emitted and stored securely. She sends, spends, and sells, and then she gets 5% of the master pool fee, which are distributed back to the minter. So 5% of the pool is then distributed among the various KAU minters as a minter's yield. And so her overall yield goes up, or her holdings go up. Then we have the holder's yield, which I really love because I like holding my money in there as well as spending it. And they receive a portion as well. The example here, Alice holds 100 KAU. 15% of the master fee pool are collected and distributed back to the holder's yield every month. Alice's proportional share of KAU held in her wallet divided by the total metal supply equals her total yield. If you get to the velocity yield, here's an example. That's a receive your proportionate return of gold and silver based on your transactional activity. So in this example, Sam trades 100 kAU. He transacts a digitalized gold pair on the Kinesis exchange, or he spends 200 kAG, or he mints 300 kAG. Overall, the people that do that get 10% of the master fee pool, and it's multiplied by his transactional velocity and divided by the total mail supply, and he gets a yield from that. And of course, there's a referrer yield. Max refers Amy. Amy sends KAU to Bob, multiplied by the transaction fee, and then you get money for that as well. So if you're interested in Kinesis, it's a great way to store your gold and silver. It's a great way to send value online. It's a great way even to trade or store some of the cryptocurrencies that they have in there in addition to KAG and KAU. And there are also yields that you get for that. I think that's a big benefit to people to consider doing that, especially when I show you what's going on today. And when I talk about what's going on today, I mean the next system that the government and the central bank have planned for you, dear listener, dear USs, and anybody in the United States who is in the financial system, even if you're not a resident, you're just visiting, or you're on some sort of visa. It doesn't matter. It's going to affect everybody. Hey, Yara, I did miss you in Mexico. Thanks for joining the program. Love to have you on. By the way, Yara is one of our great friends from our sister channel, Arcadia Economics. And as a reminder, I wanted to point out that in November, Arcadia Economics is going to be putting on Silverfest. I'm going to be a part of that. And when we get everything, including the schedule, lined out, I will send that information to you guys. Mark it. About the second week of November, we will have Silverfest details upcoming. And thank you, Chris, for joining the program as well. Chris from Arcadia is here as well. Okay, back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into the insider's thoughts on what this actually means. And this is really big. This is someone from inside the Fed who, as you can see in this video, which we posted out a couple of weeks ago, is expressing grave concern over the new digital dollar, or the American version of the central bank digital currency. If you guys don't know what a central bank digital currency is, you can find out by looking at my past videos when I've talked about this. We'll actually be going over one of those that I did last year called the BIS Global System for CBDC Revealed in Detail. I highly suggest that you guys watch that. Originally was aired July 25th. We rebroadcast it September 2nd, 2022, and we'll play a portion of that program for you as well. And then we're going to talk about what PayPal is doing, which may, take the icing on the cake as far as all the goofiness going on with electronic payment systems. And that's one of the reasons why I brought Kinesis to you today, because I think Kinesis avoids all of this mess. At least I think it's going to, but let's get into what's going on. Now, the gentleman that's going to be speaking at Columbia University is 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝘿 Kashkari. Here's his page at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. He took office as president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis on January 1, 2016, following a national search conducted by the bank's independent board of directors. In this role, he serves on the Federal Open Market Committee, bringing the 9th District's perspective to monetary policy discussions in Washington, D.C. In addition to his responsibility as a monetary policymaker, Kashkari oversees all operations of the bank, including supervision, regulation, treasury service, and payment services. So this guy's a big guy at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis and one of the main members of the Federal Reserve System, who would therefore be bringing you what we're about to talk about today. And this is in a meeting he had at Columbia University, talking about his concerns over financial control and surveillance over citizens using the digital dollar. And without further ado, let's go ahead and play this video.
I'm pretty skeptical. I keep asking anybody at the Fed or outside of the Fed to explain to me what problem this is solving. I can send anybody in this room $5 with Venmo right now, right? No, seriously. So what is it that a CBDC could do that Venmo can't do? And all I get is a bunch of hand waving. I get a bunch, well, maybe it's better for financial inclusion. Maybe it's better for cross-border remittances. Maybe. Is there any evidence that it is? And, they say, well, what about China? China's doing it. Well, I can see why China would do it. If they want to monitor every one of your transactions, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. If you want to impose negative interest rates, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. And if you want to directly tax customer accounts, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. So I get why China would be interested. Why would the American people be for that?
Very interesting testimony from him. And I want to talk about that a moment before we get further into the rest of the program. He brings up three major concerns that I think a lot of us have with regard to central bank digital currencies. Quick sound check, everything's working. Okay. So the first one is basically privacy. With a central bank digital currency, you will not have privacy over your transactions. They will know everything that you're doing. And if you want to have any transaction remain private as a citizen or even a visiting resident of the United States, you won't be able to do that with central bank digital currencies. The second one is that they'd be able to turn it off essentially, or in some way affect it based upon, say, a social credit system like China's already implemented or something like that. So if you said something that wasn't popular politically and somehow that got to a power that be, then they could basically turn off your ability to transact. So someone for me, for example, that comes on and does research into what's going on in markets may at some point in time say something that the government doesn't like. I may not be pointing fingers at a specific member of the government or criticizing the government, but I just say something the government doesn't like. And they say, hey, that doesn't meet our social credit score criteria. Let's shut off Rob. And let's shut off all the friends that have ever been associated with Rob and ever received or sent payments to Rob, to put pressure on people not to speak out. That is a potential drawback of the system. Now, that's what 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝘾𝙆𝙍 said. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen. That was his concern. But certainly, if he as a member of the Fed has that concern, and he's part of the existing central bank system, you have to wonder if the rest of us should be concerned about that as well. Again, this is somebody that's in a major leader of the Minneapolis Fed, in the Fed system. That's a pretty credible witness testimony, and it was given this over a call at Columbia University. So certainly he's doing it in front of, academia and people in people that would be probably involved in actually designing or participating in this system. He's speaking in an academic context. And that certainly, I think, is cause for some concern. And again, that's something that we have talked about for the last year and a half. And what I want to do is go back to the stream and discuss the BIS talking about this very system and how they're going to implement it, just as a reminder that, hey, the channel's been covering this for a while, and it appears as though we're not the only one that has this concern. So I'm going to play a little snippet from our video. Originally aired July 25th, 2021, re-aired September 2nd, 2022. And this is coming directly from the BIS. This is on their YouTube channel. This is a video they have put together about how they're building these central bank digital currencies. And not only will it be in the United States as a digital dollar, it'll be across the world. So they plan on implementing this system across the world. And the question is, are the Minnesota Fed's president's concerns, Ňeľ Kashkari, legitimate not only for the digital dollar, but for the rest of the world? We don't know yet, but because he made those comments, it makes sense to go back and examine the way they're building it so we can have this open discussion, as we have that right to in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Here we go.
Well, here's a video straight from the BIS Innovation Hub, published July 21, 2021. And it was in a speech at the 91st BIS AGM. And these guys on their website, and they're talking about what the system is. Now, before I get into this, I did want to show you guys, look at all the participation. All the major financial hubs are involved here. These are the existing hub centers, the red ones. They're building new ones, and they're having strategic partnerships with other places. This is worldwide cryptocurrency, central bank digital currency system. I'm going to play the video.
To say that the hub is truly becoming a global force for innovation. Let me stop here and pass to Benoît, who will guide us through the work the hub has been doing.
Thank you, Agustin, for setting the stage so nicely. The financial system relies on rails to ship money and increasingly data between locations. An open finance stack has payment rails and identity rails, just like a railway has tracks. Building tracks, digital tracks, is what we do in the Innovation Hub. And as Agustin mentioned, our tracks are the work streams that form the basis of our projects. And these are SubTech RegTech, the use of new technology for financial supervision and regulatory compliance, next generation financial market infrastructures, central bank digital currency, CBDC, open finance, cybersecurity, and green finance. In our first 3 hub centers.
All right, I actually want to go back to this previous real quick and show you what they're talking about. Check the chat here real quick, make sure everything's good. Or that's to finance
I'm going to
new
fast forward just a
projects,
little bit
CBDC,
until I get to the next part of this.
CBDCs. They're working over.
And notice here on the video that they have 3 levels. They have retail, wholesale, and multiple. Multiple is where you have the train tracks from the various CBDCs come together, and they're going to build a rail system. Notice how they're using train tracks as an example. That's why it's called a rail system. The rail are the connecting points between say, the US and say Canada. They have their own individual CBDCs, and the rail system that we're talking about here on the screen connects those together, allows each nation state, including China, Russia, whoever participates, to have their own national CBDC, and they're connected via these rails. And also notice they have 2 levels of CBDC. This is starting to become a wee bit more important as we move closer to the implementation of the system. Notice they have a retail CBDC, which is depicted as a fast train. That's to handle the millions of transactions every day you would need to handle all retail transactions in the economy. And then you have wholesale CBDCs. And I've said this for 2 years now, the speed of these CBDCs are not fast enough for one individual CBDC to hold all the transactions of a given nation state, much less the world. So they 3 layers. One layer is retail, which is going to be settled to a larger ledger, which is wholesale. And this is going to be like your nation state CBDC that's settled at the wholesale level. The reason they're calling it wholesale is more than likely it's implemented in the central banking system. And so it's got a business term to it. It's wholesale, meaning they're going to get it at cost, and they're going to distribute it out to you at cost through negative interest rates in the system, which means if they distribute you $1 of wholesale CBDC and turn it into retail, you may only get 95 cents back, 90 cents back, 85 cents back. That's the negative interest rates in the system. Now, the only way they can do it is to get rid of retail banking and to make you have a Fed account to where you're in the CBDC system. So I do believe there's going to be a lot of pressure put on the retail banking system, and maybe they'll dissolve it because they don't need everybody to have a bank or account at all these different banks, because it's too cumbersome to implement that system. They want everybody to have a retail CBDC account connected straight to the Fed, and that they control negative interest rates. And then the multiple CBDCs is the rail system, which connects each country together. Okay, further into this presentation by the BIS.
Time to get those CBDCs in place. As soon as they have them in place, there go down the fiat currencies. They're rushing them. They're rushing to get them as quickly as possible.
Our final destination, we are traveling on 3 different tracks: retail CBDC, wholesale CBDC, and for cross-border transactions, multiple CBDC. Our CBDC project portfolio has been developed under a strategy that was endorsed by the advisory committee. By design, it takes a wide-ranging approach that examines different types of CBDC and experiments with different technologies. All projects are directed towards a common objective: answering the questions that are at the top of your mind when thinking about CBDC. Our work is also closely linked with broader international initiatives. For retail CBDC,
did you hear broader international objectives? This is a worldwide currency control system by the central banks. Again, reminding you, it was 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝘍 Kashkari, president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, who brought these concerns up. This is not me this time. This is a member of the Fed system saying, wait a minute, this has the capacity to be something that American people don't want. That I don't know if that's what's going to be used for, but he's saying it this time, which seems to lend a little bit of credence to us. No longer are we wacky conspiracy theorists, because you have a member of the system having the very same concerns, talking about it at Columbia University. Okay, more on this from the BIS.
We are building projects on the menu of topics highlighted by Chapter 3 of the BIS Annual Economic Reports from 2020 and 2021, as presented by Hyun earlier today. For international CBDC, we are supporting the G20 roadmap to improve cross-border payments, where we are co-leading work on building blocks 17 and 19.
Remember when I brought you a news release from the G20 talking about CBDCs? He's mentioning it here. The G20 is going to be sort of the head of the snake for getting the CBDCs across and building that digital rail system. Remember that digital rail system I talked to you about, which is how you connect all of the national CBDCs together? That's what he just mentioned.
And here's the
For
rail
this,
system.
we're stopping first on...
Pause this real quick. They're actually going to paint a picture of a rail, and there are projects put out by different countries. China's involved in this. I'm not going to re-show you the whole video because it's long and it's been on our channel 2 times. once on July 25th and once on September 2nd of this year. But I did want to show you the rail system and how different countries are involved. So I'm going to forward a little bit in the video, but listen to the different pieces and the fact this is an international currency system. Anybody that thinks that all the central banks are not going to get together and work together, you have to see this presentation again. I cannot show this to you guys enough. It's international, and even the guys that the United States doesn't like to get along with realize that they have to go international with CBDC or it doesn't work. Everybody's got to hop on board at the same time. And the ringleader for coordinating all this is the BIS, because this is in their presentation. Here we go.
The retail track.
All right, so I'm going to go over the tracks here in a minute. I'm going to stop the share here just for a very quick moment because I want to see if there are any questions actually going to work.
Our stop is in Hong Kong, project 𝙂𝙁𝙁𝙁. 𝙂𝙁𝙁𝙁 lays out
Okay, I'm sorry to stop, but notice how he said Hong Kong. Okay, what if we said about China? And basically Hong Kong is now going to be a part of China. China's not going to let Hong Kong go on its own. But this is the relationship to the Asian side, where we talked about how China and the Asian nations would take a bigger role in this new supranational system to control the CBDCs and also the gold market.
Architectural design for retail CBDC. It builds on the intermediated vision described in this year's Chapter 3 of the Annual Economic Report. In any CBDC design, central banks and the private sector should focus on what they do best. For this, we've joined forces with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority to explore a two-tiered distribution model for retail CBDC. The plan is to create a prototype with two separate platforms. First, an inner DLT-based platform where central banks can issue CBDC with access to banks only. And second, an outer platform with access to the general public and to banks.
Here you go. That's the two-tier system. Central bank issues wholesale CBDC to the banks. The banks discount by negative interest rates or a fee to the people. This is how they implement negative interest rates, and they control the aggregate monetary supply. And we're going to pitch this as when the system crashes and people are in trouble and you have all these failing banks in the system, they're going to come out with a solution. And this is the solution. It's going to be run by the central bank. You're going to have the big commercial banks participating. What this also does is it wraps up all of that business going through credit unions and independent banks all into what? The commercial banking system. Who is going to benefit from this? The central bank will benefit from control of the system and also getting fees back by issuing wholesale CBDC and getting some sort of feedback from the commercial banks. And this consolidates the banking system away from independent banks and credit unions into a centralized commercial bank model. That's how they control it. They're getting rid of the retail banking system and the ability to bank independently. This centralizes control of the banking system right around this hub in each country. And then each of these hubs in each country is then connected to each other via the rail system. A little bit more on this, and then we'll stop and talk more new, because I got more. We're not done yet. We're talking about payment systems. I got more. Stay tuned after this.
Yeah, see what he said here? Some people said that the central banks and the commercial banks were arguing over control of the central bank digital currency system, but there have been innovations at both levels, and they're going to work together. Because remember, most of the general commercial banks own the central banks. At least they own the Fed, and so the commercial banks are not going away. So it's a two-tier system. There's going to be a DLT or digital ledger technology system between the central bank and the banks, and then the banks themselves are going to distribute garbage.
Okay, back to rails. We're going to fast forward through this, but I just want to show you what they've got set up.
Security. They're going to build better security in the system.
Track in the CBDC space. Wholesale CBDC. Here we have two stops, both in Switzerland. The first wholesale stop is Helvetia, which is the name for the national personification of Switzerland. The Helvetia project is about wholesale CBDC for settling tokenized assets. It has been done jointly with the Swiss National Bank and
so that's the Swiss getting
into the spectrum
in a project called Helvetia, which is named after an aspect of the Swiss system. So what they're doing is they're branding this. All of these parts of the rail are being branded via the various international players, so that people will say, oh, the Swiss have Helvetia. We're so glad that we contributed. And then they're going to transfer their affinity for the Swiss national currency over to CBDC. Why? They're building affinity by naming this, and they're going to roll it out and say this is a solution. And look, Hong Kong has Aurum and Swiss has Helvetica. We all worked on this together, guys. This is an international effort. We're trying to save you from the crash of the system. And that's the way they do it, through affinity, making you think that, oh yeah, this is what we wanted to do all along. It's international cooperation on a global currency system.
Making sure everything's fit and fit.
Our second stop on the wholesale track is Project Arena. We decided to build an in-house shop for experimentation that will help our work in many different areas, including CBDC.
Machine learning to optimize settlement, as you can see here. It also can be machine learning to figure out who's sending what. That's where you don't have your privacy. That's not good stuff. All right, back to the rail system, then we have the CBDC bridge. I'm going to stop after this one. You guys can watch the video after. I just want to point out, they have all this stuff planned, and it's the international community doing it. It's not just the United States, not just Europe. China's in there, the Swiss are in, everybody's involved in this.
On our international track. For this part of the journey, we are experimenting with different users of wholesale CBDC in a cross-border context. And our work on the international track is a key priority. Our first stop is in Hong Kong, at the CBDC Bridge project. We are all aware of the pain points that exist in cross-border fund transfers.
Cross-border transaction with CBDC, which will replace the wire system. That's essentially what they built there. CBDCs will replace all of the banking functions you see now. You won't have wires, you won't have retail banks, you don't need them. It's centralized control. That's what they want. Further on.
National settlement network could be an... Our international track continues its route and stops in Singapore at Project
Singapore. Get it? Another location.
Dunbar. If you are wondering
Again, another Asian connection, this time in Singapore.
How an international settlement network could be enabled through different governance and connectivity models, you will find the answers here. The project is being implemented jointly with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, building on the work of Project 𝙂𝙂 settlements. The international railway continues on to Europe through the...
Europe this time. Lest you thought Europe wasn't going to get involved. Oh, they're involved.
Swiss mountains until it reaches Jura at the French-Swiss border. Here, we are exploring the use of a wholesale CBDC for cross-border settlement, jointly with the Banque de France, the Swiss National Bank.
So wholesale CBDC, meaning the commercial version of CBDC as it's first issued. If you think about how money's issued, it goes to basically the big commercial banks, which then issue it to the public. They're doing the same thing with CBDC. Why? The commercial banks get the money first in case they need it. They issue it when they have to. It keeps the commercial banks protected in this cocoon of money so that they can't run out, while they'll only release or retract out of the system, put in or retract out of the system what they need electronically. And it won't be I don't think for the benefit of you and me, at least if we're following what 𝙄𝙄𝙇𝘶 basically said. So I think that's enough on that video. I want to move on to PayPal. So looking at alternatives, 𝙄𝙄𝙇𝘶 in his video here talked about Venmo as an example, right? Here's the president and chief executive officer of Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis who talked about, I can do this with Venmo. Well, guess what? They're not going to let you use Venmo or PayPal. Here's why. From Zero Hedge. When I first heard about PayPal's plan to deduct $2,500 from user accounts for each instance where, in PayPal's sole discretion, the account holder had transmitted misinformation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a social credit system that PayPal's trying to implement, and they put it into their user policies. Listen, the author says, I all but took a strip out of the person who sent it to me because I couldn't believe it was real. It was from a Telegram channel, and it looked like it read something batshit straight out of 4chan, and I told him as much. Sure enough, the URL to the updated AUP, that's the user agreement, was on her PayPalObjects.com domain, which is owned by PayPal. The document appeared to have been a PDF version of the forthcoming new AUP, which was due to roll out in early November of this year. That's next month. It has since been replaced by the blank page, but here's what it says. You are independently responsible for complying with all applicable laws of your actions related to your use of PayPal services, regardless of the purpose of the use. In addition, you must adhere to the terms of the acceptable use policy. Violation of the AUP constitutes a violation of the PayPal user agreement and may subject you to damages. Get this, ladies and gentlemen, including liquidated damages of $2,500 per violation, which may be debited directly from your PayPal account as outlined in the user agreement. meaning if you have the money in there, they're going to take it. But also, since it's linked to your bank account, I'm assuming they can debit it right out of your bank account for doing what? Something that violates PayPal's acceptable use policy. If you think that you're going to be able to use Venmo and PayPal's alternatives to the CBD system, it ain't working. They're closing the loop. They're taking the commercial systems and they're closing the loop and forcing them into the CBDCs. And they're doing it through a social credit system here to prevent people from doing stuff that they don't want you to do. They're ring fencing all payment systems so that they must fit within the auspices of the central bank digital currency system. You can't get out of it using PayPal and Venmo. Okay, you can't. Well, the bail-ins have been ringing for a while. So this guy goes on to talk about previous bail-ins and banking crises. He highlights what we saw in Cyprus in 2013. I'm going to read it real quick. It says right here. In 2013, during the banking crisis in Cyprus, the first bail-in was enacted when depositors' savings were confiscated from their bank accounts to recapitalize on the banking system that over-leveraged itself, their excessive bad debts. So you have that one. It's going to come for everybody. And according to Darren Feinstein, it's a tweet about what he thinks CBDCs are. Purchase denied. You've confirmed your quota of real meat this month. Please try meat substitute. The reason I bring that up is because they're now having 3D printed meat because they don't want you to have regular meat, or they don't think you should have regular meat. So they're coming up with 3D printed meat. Okay. What is a potential alternative to this system? Well, going back to what I said at the beginning, what if you had a Kinesis account and you can send it within this closed-ended Kinesis system? You could send payments back and forth to people stored in gold and silver. That's a potential way out of this system. And you can get some fees for holding and doing it, which is an incentive to actually use the system. So Kinesis could potentially be a solution to that system, which is one of the reasons I brought it up in this video. And yes, they are one of our preferred providers, but this is the reason why, because we're trying to provide you guys an alternative. So you guys are interested. We've got a referral link to Kinesis down there. You can open an account if you think that that's best for you. Do your own due diligence and make your own decision. But I think that this system is very scary. And it's going back to 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙇𝙊𝙍 Kashkari, who is the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis president, who said it, at Columbia University. And it's not my concern, it's their concern. And that's something I think that we should be worried about. And if you're trying to figure out ways out of that system, of course, you got physical gold and silver. I mean, that's the ultimate money because it can't be tracked, really. I mean, if you already have it and you use it, it's a way for you to transact in value. And again, it aligns with the U.S. Constitution. So unless they get rid of the U.S. Constitution, which would take either a constitutional convention or a vote by the people, you have the right, according to the Constitution, to use gold and silver as money. Okay, until they get rid of the Constitution, and it has to be through some sort of popular referendum or a constitutional convention, you can use gold and silver and it's legal. Now, they may say you have to use CBDCs, just like they said you have to use dollars, but it's in the Constitution. Another way to do it may be to use cryptocurrencies or an asset-backed token like Kinesis. I would prefer to use an asset-backed token like Kinesis because it's it's tied to the gold and silver. It's tied to gold and silver you have in storage. It belongs to you. It's allocated, all those things. And you can send value across the world to other Kinesis holders. I think that's a legitimate way to do it. The third way may be the cryptos. Your mileage may vary on the cryptos. I've had my concerns, but as we move closer to this system, I'm beginning to cozy up a little bit to the crypto, saying maybe that's a way for me to make a payment if I need to make a payment to someone outside CBDCs. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody to break the law or anything like that. As it stands right now, and as I understand it, gold and silver are money. Fiat monies shouldn't really be, but that's what people use. So cash and gold and silver are free game, and again, until they get rid of the Constitution, at least with gold and silver. But it doesn't hurt to prepare for the future. If you're in the banking system and they're implementing this system across the world and they're doing a closed-end system where they're going to have control, I don't know that that's where I would want to leave all my money. I can't tell you guys what to do, but I have concerns about that. And so I'm beginning to think about alternatives. Gold and silver is one, Kinesis is another, maybe some things like cryptos, just, to keep myself in a way that I can transfer value that is constitutional, that is legal, that doesn't give the central bankers control. In other words, I'm not going to volunteer to go in this system because of what 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙇𝙊𝙍 Kashkari said, not because of what I said, what the Federal Reserve president of the Minnesota branch said. He said it. He has concerns, and he said it at a major academic institution. So based on his concerns, that's why we did the video outlining all the potential alternatives that you may want to potentially take a look at. Okay, guys, I don't see any super chats, so I don't see any super questions that you guys want. I will look through the regular chat and see if there are any questions. While I do that, I wanted to read out the poll. So we do have a poll up. It is a digital dollar, the Fed's version of the CBDC system in the US, helpful or not to you as a citizen of the US? Remember, as a citizen, you have gold and silver and you can use the US dollar. 8% of you say helpful, 86% say not helpful, 6% say don't care either way. I wonder if those don't care either way votes were put in before we revealed the system. If they were good on you, if they're not, maybe you want to go back and revote or just reconsider your thought on that, because I do think that there's a lot of risk there. Jay says, what did the guy from the Fed say about CBDC? If you go back to the beginning of the video on a replay, Jay, we played the whole video for you. Essentially, you had three concerns: lack of privacy, lack of control, lack of anonymity, and a closed-ended system which could be used for social credit scoring to prevent people from exercising their Bill of Rights right to speak their mind and talk about what they want to talk about. So basically, the CBD system would be a Bill of Rights killer and a Constitution killer, in my opinion, if Neil Kashkari's concern about that is correct. And that definitely would be something that I would be concerned about. Remember, guys, if you want to support the channel, we do have memberships now here on YouTube. You can be a basic supporter and just thank us for the work that we already do, as well as you can sign up for the 𝙁𝙁𝙁𝙇𝙊𝙎 Unhinged, in which every 2 weeks I give you a nice little video on what I think is really going on. And it allows me to be a little bit more expressive than I could be here on the free channel and put some of the things together in a longer threaded format than we can do here on these individual videos on the channel. Thank you, everybody that have subscribed to us, including Ralph Potts and everyone else, Peter Fräulein for riding shotgun, everybody else for joining the program. I'm looking for questions now in the chat that you guys may have, and I'm not seeing anyone. Road Tested said, does anyone think 5 to 10% of net worth in PM is nearly enough? To answer that question, Road Tested, for me, no, I'm heavier weighted in the precious metals, although I do have other investments, but I went a little bit heavier because to me, they're long-term cash. Now, I realize the price goes up and down and you can lose value in terms of fiat, but that's because of the derivative system and the way that they're priced. Long-term, I think the metals are going to hold their value. And specifically, I think with silver being commoditized so much and with the shortages I see on the horizon I've been talking about, I think it's going to also be an investment and potentially be worth a lot more than it is now. If all of those things that we think are about the silver market end up coming true, we'll have to follow that on the channel as we continue to go along. Arcadia Economics says, thank you for the question, Chris. How can I hire that BIS guy to appear at my next birthday party? Well, you could probably hire him as a clown, since a lot of these guys are clowns, and we'll nominate him for the Gold Silver Pros Clown Award since we haven't given that away in a while. And he can entertain the children. Well, he might actually scare the children if he starts talking about social credit system and CBDCs. But, you know, if you paint him up in enough makeup, maybe he can pass as entertainment for the children. Certainly, I would laugh at him if he came to my birthday party. All right, I think that that's probably going to do it for the program, guys. We've answered all questions. Again, just to reiterate, central bank digital currencies are coming. The infrastructure's been built. It's been built for years. They originally talked about it in public that I know of, and that 2015 IMF paper that we have put on the channel so many times, backed up by this BIS video we put on the channel so many times, now backed up by testimony from Minnesota Fed President Neil Kashkari at Columbia University, and then also backed up by the fact that we're getting news that they're going to start locking down all these alternative payment systems. They're ring-fencing you into this system, but according to the Constitution, we can still use gold and silver, and until they outlaw dollars, we should be able to use dollars, okay? That's my, my opinion. I'm sticking to it. And if you want an alternative, I gave you one in Kinesis. Remember, if you do sign up for Kinesis, it helps the channel. But even if you don't, it's okay if you don't sign up. Just consider it part of your plan, or all other alternatives like Kinesis, because you may want to think about 2 or 3 different ways in which you can transact outside the system, which is wholly unconstitutional. And I don't see the American people accepting it unless we have a complete meltdown, and out of fear they do, but they're going to have to suspend the Constitution to do it, because the Constitution clearly says what can be money and what can't. And this is definitely not part of that. So we're going to see if that constitutional battle, how it wages off and what happens. Thank you guys so much for joining the program. I appreciate all your support. We're not done yet this week. We'll be back Thursday with more content for you guys. Until next time, this is 𝙁𝙁𝙁𝙁𝙁 with Gold Silver Pros.